said you could move up in status?
No. I don't know.
You just tried it.
Yeah.
See if it would work, and it did.
Well, before we begin our study of this week's Torah portion, Devarim 8 verse 10 says, "So you'll eat and be satisfied, you'll bless Adonai your God for the good land he has given you." So let's do that. Abba, we have eaten and we are satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name we thank you. Amen. So, probably not a surprise that we are studying Torah portion Balaq, we read a few minutes ago. This was the first verse of our portion, and these were the aliyot. Just to remind you what we read in terms of the Haftorah, we were reading in Micah. We read Matthew 21, 1 through 11 of our and the Masorah, and we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. So, where we are in the annual cycle, we are in the fourth month. As you remember, that sometime during the exile to Babylon, the month became known as Tammuz. Tanakh only refers to it as the fourth month. And as we discussed in the fun challenge, that the 17th day of the fourth month became the fast of the fourth month, from Zechariah chapter 8. The breach of the wall, and it begins, as we'll talk about in a minute. It begins what's known as the 3 weeks, basically a time of mourning up until the breach of the wall of Jerusalem, until the destruction of the temple on the 9th day of the 5th month, or the 9th of Tish B'Av. So this is what those fasts are, where they're discussed in the Tanakh. This is from Zechariah chapter 8. It reads, "Adonai Tzevaot says, the fast days of the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 10th month are to become times of joy, gladness, and cheer for the house of Yehudah. Therefore, love, truth, and peace. Adonai Tzevaot says, in the future, peoples and inhabitants of many cities will come. Inhabitants of one city will travel to another and say, we must go ask Adonai's favor and consult Adonai Tzevaot. I'll go too. Yes, many peoples and powerful nations will come to consult Adonai Tzevaot in Jerusalem and ask Adonai's favor. Adonai Tzevaot says, when that time comes, 10 men will take hold, speaking all the languages of the nations, will grab hold of the cloak of a Jew and say, we want to go with you because we have heard God is with you." There's lots of discussion in Messianic circles about this particular passage in 8 verse 23. 10 men taking hold, speaking all the languages of the nations, will grab hold of the cloak of a Jew. My thought is that it's sort of a euphemism, so to speak, with people from the nations grabbing hold of Yeshua's talit and going with him, because that this is not speaking about people from Judah, but people from the nations, either true Gentiles or scattered from Ephraim. It doesn't require that interpretation, but the Jew that they're taking hold of the cloak of definitely would be one who is either, if he's not Yeshua himself, he's a follower of Yeshua. So that's where we are in the cycle, the fast days. And so here's a discussion of what those fast days are. As we mentioned, it was initially the fast of the fourth month was initially on the ninth day, and I think in Karaite Judaism it's still held on the ninth day. The 17th day is within the vast majority of Judaism. The fast of the fifth month and ninth of Av is when the temple was destroyed. The fast of the seventh month is not Yom Kippur. It is the third day of the month when the assassination of Gedaliah. We should read about that also in the Tanakh in Jeremiah 41. And the fast of the 10th month is when Nebuchadnezzar began the siege of Jerusalem from the first temple period. So the fast of the fourth month begins the 3 weeks. So typically a mourning period, and according to traditional halacha, the fast of the fourth month isn't like the fast of Yom Kippur. It's a dawn to nightfall fast, and again, according to halacha, it's permissible to get up before dawn and eat before the fast starts. One of the traditions about the timing of it, at least of the 70th day of the fourth month, it's that Moshe broke the tablets when he saw Bnei Israel worshiping the golden calf. So this time period, the 3 weeks, begins this time of mourning between the fourth day or the 7th day of the fourth month to the 9th day of the fifth month. It's referred to within traditional Judaism as between the straits, which is based on a phrase in Lamentations that says, "Echa, all of Israel's pursuers overtook her between the straits," and the sages explain that between the straits here refers to that 3-week time period between Tammuz 17 and the 9th of Av. So there are some traditions about the 3 weeks. Again, these are traditions about how it is observed. Several things are not done, including conducting weddings, playing musical instruments or listening to music, getting a haircut or a shave, although that is permitted within Sephardic Judaism, up until the week of Tisha B'Av. Again, these are traditions, not Torah, but you won't, certainly for the weddings part, you won't see a Jewish wedding occur during the 3 weeks.
I'm thinking outside of the weddings, maybe the rest of that is fading traditions.
Could be. I can say I'm not planning to get a haircut or a shave, so that's already.
Wait a minute.
All right. So moving on to our portion itself, Balaq. And on the initial slide, I had it as Balaq with a Q / Balaq with a K. It's because it's more often transliterated with a K, but as you can see that would be a kuf, so it would be a Q.
Either one works.
So again, either one gives the same sound, yeah. In this instance. So, mitzvot in the portion. That is the question you've all been studying, I'm sure. How many mitzvot are in this Torah portion?
Hey.
A? So, what are you, Fonzie? Well, I can first of all say that it's not 7. Nor is it 3. meaning, of course, that it is in fact A or Z. Good job. I mean, this you couldn't. It really wasn't anything to draw from it in terms of the mitzvot. What?
Well, read it. Did you say something?
All right, so here was our first verse there. Balak bin Zippor, or Balak, son of Zippor. So what is that? How does that come from? So Balaam and Balak. What in terms of Balaam, the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon says that Balaam is master, or Baal, lord of the people, would be a translation of that. Some have called it more as Balaam, or destroyer or conqueror of the people, or Balaam is not of the people. So a bit more on that, more different kind of views on that. As we mentioned already, Balak is devastator. Similar meanings are in Aramaic as well as in Assyrian. Of course, we could probably say that Balak wasn't a Hebrew speaker, but based on, we read from the Hebrew text about someone who's not a Hebrew, but still have that same idea based on the meanings in Assyrian and Aramaic, which would be similar to Canaanite words there. So, according to the Bible dictionary, Balaam is destroyer of the people. It's the same idea as the Greek name Nikolaos, conqueror of the people. We see that in Hikalut, Revelation chapter 2. So take a moment to turn there. Hikalut, or Revelation chapter 2, 14 through 16. Which reads this. This is from the Complete Jewish Bible. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. You have some people who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to set a trap for the people of Israel so that they would eat food that had been sacrificed to idols and commit sexual sin. Likewise, you too have people who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Therefore, turn from these sins. Otherwise, I'll come to you very soon and make war against them with the sword of my mouth. So there is a connection in the book of Revelation between the Nicolaitans and Balaam. So the dictionary may well be right, as Balaam should be as destroyer of the people, because that is essentially what the Nikolaos means, as conqueror of the people. So that will be some sort of a parallel there. So here is discussion of from the Zohar about Balak and Balaam. Balak is the letters Ba and Lak, meaning came, he who strikes, Ba Lacha, and hurts him as he wishes. Balaam consists of the letters Baal Am, meaning there are no people, Baal, no, and people, Am, and no shepherd. Our name will cause their destruction and uprooting from the world. Anyway, that's obviously The Zohar is an ancient commentary on the Torah, mystical interpretation typically, like you said. So, who was Balaam? According to the Zohar, Balaam was a descendant of Laban, and the golden calf idolaters were sons of Balaam, the grandsons of the evil Laban. But that's not quite the view of the Midrash, which actually says that Balaam is none other than Laban himself. And the wall against which Balaam's foot was, his leg was brushed or crushed or scraped, is the very mound of stones that Laban and Jacob built on Mount Gilead back in Bereshit 31 to the vow that said, I will not pass by this mound of stones. So if that were accurate, then Balaam, of course, was violating that by passing past the stones. That doesn't seem quite right, since in terms of timeline, they're leaving Egypt, and Jacob, who made that vow was there with Laban, couldn't be the same person here. It'd be too old, I think. Could be a descendant of him, but that would really be the question of where he started his journey from. As we're reading in the complete Jewish Bible, it had in the first of our reading, it had in brackets the word Euphrates, which was not in the text. And so if your Bible didn't have the word Euphrates in there, that would not be wrong, because it actually is not in the text. So this is an interpolation, I guess you could say, from the complete Jewish Bible, putting it in there. But it's based on the tradition that the river being spoken of here, because the text, this is from the Tree of Life version, says he sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, at Petor near the river in his native land, saying to him, ... So the river, according to the Targum, says it was the Euphrates. So that'd be a pretty long journey if that were the case, if we're sending these messengers back and forth. There is a wording difference. So if you look in where the phraseology in the Aramaic Tanakh, if you will, not the Targum, it reads as if it were saying Bnei Ammon, the sons of Ammon, instead of where it says sons of his people in chapter 20. Let's see, is it? I don't have the verse in my mind exactly where it says sons of his people. I should have put that in the text here. But it's talking about when I believe it's when he left and returned. This translation says to his home versus sons of his people. Bnei Amo, sons of his people, is how the Masoretic text reads. But the Aramaic text, the Latin Vulgate, and the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is in Hebrew, says Bnei Ammon, sons of Ammon, or Ammon, where would that place this river? Well, Ammon is the modern area, like Amman is in the capital of Jordan, so it'd be much closer to Israel than going to the Euphrates. So the river would not be the Euphrates, but likely the Yabok or possibly the Yarden or the Jordan River.
I noticed, I think I read that portion. Noticed when it comes to the word river in the middle of the sentence in mine, it capitalized it and then had a footnote mark, so it kind of footnote, and it said Euphrates.
Well, typically when we see the river, there's been lots of places where the river is referring to the Euphrates. Like before we say the Wadi of Egypt, that's typically talking about the Nile. But I want to say that there may be places where the river refers to the Jordan River as well. So
It was capitalized,
Yeah,
so I knew
right.
that.
well, that's what.
I don't know where they got the capitalization from, if that was part of the interpretation, or if that was actually some way in the original scripture.
Yeah, well,
Stand out.
that is kind of the position of the Targum. You see the Tree of Life version here also has river capitalized. The river in his native land. But, if it were the closer version, that may there is a reference in what's known as the Deir Allah inscription. Deir Allah. It's dating from 800 BCE, before the Common Era, but it was discovered in 67. And the arrow kind of points to where it is. It's kind of along the Yarden River, the Jordan River, between, it's north of the river, the connection between the Jordan and Yabok, and it's, well south of the Sea of Kinneret up there. So it'd be basically, kind of across the river from Shomron or Samaria. So that would be a lot closer if this was basically his area. So it's pretty fragmented.
Well, where was he when Israel finally destroyed him? Said it when they were in that land fighting battle, they destroyed him.
Well, that is in another chapter.
Yeah,
that
wouldn't
is-
that be the river where he lived in that area?
He's with Moab now, though. It'd be in the area of the Moabites. I'm not sure if this map shows that, but it would be, just in that region, probably south of the Yabok, I would guess, from where Moab typically is rendered. It would be close to where the description is here, because Israel had to basically go across through that area to get and crossed over the Yarden, from going from from west to east. Now, this map shows Mount Nebo there at the bottom. That's of course where Moses was. At the very bottom of the screen. It's hard to see from your chair there, but where it says Salt Sea, it's the Dead Sea. Go over to your right somewhat. This is not going to probably show up on it, but in this graphic, that is Mount Nebo right there. This is the Dead Sea, and up there is where the inscription was. So Israel crossed over from west going to the east, across over the Yarden. So I don't recall, but it's not in this next chapter, but it's our next portion, but next portion after that.
It's in Moab, he's not near the Euphrates.
No, Moab is nowhere near the Euphrates.
That's where he lived.
Yeah. If it's Moab, if that's where he was.
Yeah.
But it's not anywhere near the Euphrates.
Right.
Close to Hebron, actually.
Yeah. Because this is when it's.
Close to Jerusalem. Interesting.
Yeah, it says, according to this, where Balaam was killed in chapter 31 of the book of Beit. They fought against Midian, killed every male, killed Balaam, son of Beor, people who took the captive of Midian, captive women of Midian. They took all the booty and all people and animals they captured and brought the captive's booty and spoil to Moshe, Eleazar the Cohen, and the community of Israel in the camp of the plains of Moab by the Yarden across from Jericho.
He took them to that place.
Yeah, but it was not, it was, they were still, that would be still on they were killed on, basically on the, east side of the Jordan River. Not anywhere near where if he was from, nowhere near the Euphrates, this battle would take place.
Coming out of the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
I wonder why they come up with that,
From the river?
with Euphrates being the river.
Yeah. I don't know. It's possible that because of other places that refer to the river as the Euphrates, that is, that's where they drew it from, the similar words in different places in the Torah that talked about the river being the Euphrates. That it was assumed that when this text said the river, it was also talking about the same place.
You could throw some Western logic in there kind of and just say, just as an example, if you're in Colorado and you talk about the river, it's the Arkansas River. If you're in Missouri and you talk about the river, it could be one or two, right? If you're in somewhere else, up in Oregon, it could be the Snake, let's go down to the river. Maybe if you think about it like that. So
I'd say Colorado.
you said, Colorado, yeah, exactly. So that's just obviously Western logic, but it could possibly be applied here, talking about the river in the area where they were. There's only one, right?
Well, but in this case, though, if they talk about the river, they're talking about a river that's, Jacob's river, so to speak, when, in the.
So that's not going to settle anything, but it's interesting to think
I
about.
appreciate that discussion.
Yeah.
I wondered about that. So,
So this is the kind of a picture of the description. This is a picture of the text. It's Aramaic mixed with Canaanite, and here's a picture of it in the museum in Amman, Jordan, which of course also has parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls are there in that museum as well. I'm not gonna really spend a lot of time on this, but this is this Der Allah inscription begins with, this is the misfortune of the book of Balaam, son of Beor. So it's about him, whether it's, it talks about, his suffering, so to speak. So it's whether it's originally about him or simply made to look like about him, and it is pretty ancient, 800 BCE. And it is talking about the same Balaam, whether it is a real, story, by him or someone who actually knew him or a legend written after, we just don't know. But it is, pretty ancient. It would be, by this point, it would be several hundred years, after the Exodus that this occurred, or that this was, if it's right in terms of the timeline of the Der Allah inscription. But there are some holes in the narrative, so to speak. There's some lacunae in this where they you can see the places that have brackets around it are interpreted in the text. They're cave worms or whatever has eaten them up, or just the ravages of time otherwise.
Sure. If you think about when you get home, would you share these slides with me?
Absolutely. All right, and that is it from the Der Allah inscription.
That's interesting. The piglet drove out the leopard.
It's a prophecy.
Like, is that a metaphor?
So here's a question. We've actually talked about this thing before. Is there a problem here between chapter 22, verse 12, and chapter 22, verse 20, where first God said to Balaam, do not go with them, and then later he says, since the men came to you to summon you, arise and go with them.
Yeah, there's something missing there, seems like.
Well, I think what's missing is, at least according to commentary from an interpretation of the Hebrew from a 19th century Rabbi Yaakov Zevi Mecklenburg, he said that the answer to that was no, he didn't change his mind. The difference here between the two is in verse 12, it uses the word imahim, which he says implies full agreement of purpose, do not go with them, and itam, to accompany them, which does not necessarily mean agreement. So to go back to the text there, do not go with them in full agreement of purpose, imahim, and arise and go with them. It's not the same word. It's itam, meaning accompany them, but you're not necessarily
Accompany them, but don't curse them.
Don't go along with what you're
don't
saying.
go along. Yeah, right. You're not in agreement with Balak who wants to curse the people. You're just going along with his escorts.
Don't go along with the plan, but you can go with them physically.
I can see that, because ultimately, he blesses them.
Right.
Yes. So it's interesting that we read in Galuta Revelation about the doctrine of Balaam. There's also, we see a kind of parallel in some ways with, in the Talmud, because the idea of Balaam, as we see in chapter 2 of Revelation, that said that he set a trap for the people of Israel so they would eat food sacrificed to idols and commit sexual sin. Well, that New Testament teaching is also essentially found in the Talmud, where it says that same idea, where it says the God of these people hates fornication. They lust after linen clothing which rich people wear. Come, I will give you advice. This is Balaam talking to Balak. Make tents and set whores in them, an old one outside and a girl inside. Let them sell linen garments to them. So it's kind of a long story, but this is the old lady on the outside says, would you like some linen clothes? The old lady would offer them at true value, and the girl would offer them at less, and so they would eventually go in to see the younger woman who is selling the linen garments at a cheaper price, and then she would ask, do you want a drink of a cup of wine? When he had drunk a cup of wine, he would become inflamed. He said to her, submit to me. And she would say, oh, I will only submit to you if you worship this. And it would be essentially some sort of idol. So basically, what difference would it make to you? Do they ask anything more from you than that you bear yourself? But he did not know that was how, in fact, the idol was worshipped. So here is kind of a Baal idol there. And so you also have to, of course, deny the Torah. Once you start down that path, now you have to deny the Torah of Moses. And so that's how they began to worship Baal Peor, was a result of of following Balaam's advice. And what happened at Baal Peor, of course, was that a plague was averted, but 24,000 people died as a result of this plague. So, more detail from the Talmud that's in the chapter 2 here of Revelation, but this is a good summary. It says the trap for people of Israel, they would eat food that has been sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual sin. So it's a pretty good summary of what we read.
That's why Israel destroyed.
Yes. So, come then, put a curse upon the people for me, since they too are too numerous for me, because I can thus defeat them and drive them out. For I know that whom you bless is blessed indeed, and whom you curse is cursed indeed. This is Balak talking to Balaam. So the question is Balak correct? And did Balaam actually have the ability or the power to cause a curse on Israel that would actually stick? His curse would be valid.
For it, evidently.
He did have a reputation for it. That what he said happened. In this case, though, I think the answer is no.
Yeah, same.
Because even what Balaam says here, come curse Jacob for me, come bring anger of Israel. And this is his response. Balaam says, how can I curse? God is not what God is not cursed. How can I anger? God is not angry. And so as we read, back in Bereshit chapter 12, I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you, I will curse. And all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. So in that context, if Israel is already blessed, a curse from Balak or by Balaam at Balak's instruction would not have effect. It's kind of the idea, in my view, about why, in terms of the Noah episode, Noah drunk and Shem, Ham, Yafet, but it was it was Ham that discovered him, but Canaan was the one who was cursed. For the same reason, I think that there's already been a blessing by Yah placed on the three sons of Noah that you can't undo that blessing.
But in this case, he couldn't curse them, but he could make them curse themselves.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Right. And that's exactly, I think, the point of both what the Talmud said, but also in Higglud, Revelation chapter 2, where they were essentially set a trap for the people. In other words, if you can bring destruction upon yourself if you go whoring after idols. So here's a question, or a statement rather. Balak's descendants will rule over Israel. Here's the text. Then Balaam said to Balak, build me 7 altars, and here prepare for me 7 bulls and 7 rams. So Balak did just as Balaam had said. Balak and Balaam have offered a bull and a ram on each altar. It may sound strange, but as a result of this act of setting up the altars and the offering and making the offerings, the rabbis the sages teach that the descendants of Balak will rule and reign over Israel. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Sounds like a bad thing.
It sounds like it'd be a horrible thing, right? But here's what's said. As a result of the 42 offerings that were presented by the wicked Balak to force Balaam to curse Israel, Balak, was deemed worthy that Ruth would descend from him. Ruth was a granddaughter of Eglon, the grandson of Balak, king of Moab, and therefore, as you can guess, David is descended from Ruth. And so David would be if this is correct, David would be a literal descendant of Balak through his wife, his mom, Ruth. Or his grandmother, excuse me. So, if the rabbi is correct, we would definitely want Balak's descendants to rule over Israel because that would be the Davidic line.
Interesting.
Balak wasn't part of Israel.
No, he was king of Moab.
No, I mean Balaam, sorry.
No.
So I found it kind of strange that, go ahead.
Well, I was just say, yeah, a non-Israelite has a
Well,
close and personal
even,
relationship with the God of Israel.
Pagan sorcerer kind of.
Yeah.
He done pagan rituals too. Why would God bother communicating with him when he calls on God?
Why indeed?
That's, Balaam is sometimes called the prophet for profit. And there was a, prophet for money, prophet.
Definitely not savory.
Yeah.
Yes, so I mean, why wasn't he cursed of God for even trying? Yeah.
Yeah. The question is, how did he get that close and personal relationship with the God of Israel?
Y'all even paid attention while he asked.
That, I don't know.
Is it maybe kind of an example of how, I think it's in Romans when Paul says that the gifts and the calling of God are without revocation. If someone's been gifted with something, it's not, just because they're disobedient doesn't really mean that God takes it away from them. I mean, it's just not there.
Wouldn't that presuppose that God enables evil conjuring too? Enable someone to be able to do that?
Well, some things Balaam said was, I can do nothing except what God tells me to do.
Well, was that it just for Israel? Because he had the reputation of when he cursed others, even the kings around there knew what he cursed went away. It was cursed. So I found that strange.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of back to who was Balaam. This is Nachmani's comment. It says that for the first time in Balaam's life, Elohim did not just happen upon him. For the sake of Israel, Elohim appeared to Balaam in the fullness of his glory, and in contrast to his sorcery, Balaam experienced the height of true prophecy. Targum Onkelos says that Balaam still had bad intentions and malevolent motives even still. And Peter in 2 Peter chapter 2 names Balaam with the false and wicked prophets. It's chapter 2, verse 15. These people left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam bin Beor, who loved the wages of doing harm, but was rebuked for his sin. A dumb beast of burden spoke out with a human voice and restrained the prophet's insanity. Waterless springs they are, mist-driven by a gust of wind. For them has been reserved the blackest darkness. Who's mentioned here is obviously on the bad side, but that falls after the leading people astray, wicked deeds and things in 2 Peter chapter 2. So this is sort of the same sort of question you're asking, is that what Nachmanides is talking about is that, well, in terms of how they encountered each other before, according to this idea, Balaam was basically walking along, minding his own business, and Yah happened upon him and gave him some wisdom or insight, perhaps. And that's what Nachmanides is thinking. This is really the first time he's been in all these things where he's blessing Israel. This is the first time he's been working with the fullness of prophecy in contrasting sorcery. So the question still remains: why would Yah work through a sorcerer?
Sorcerer.
Yeah, or diviner. Yeah. So there are, we kind of read about 4 prophetic time periods in this Torah portion. The time period in the wilderness, conquering the land, the greatness after the conquest, and there is an end of days prophecy given in the closing, in the end of 24, in the chapter 24. And so this is how the end of days prophecy reads in Art Scroll. I shall see him, but not now. I shall look at him, but it is not near. A star is issued forth from Jacob, and a scepter bearer has risen from Israel. He shall pierce the nobles of Moab and undermine the children of Seth. Edom shall be a conquest, and Seir shall be the conquest of his enemies, and Israel will attain success. One from Jacob shall rule and destroy the remnant of the city. He saw Amalek and declaimed his parable and said, Amalek is the first among nations, but its end will be eternal destruction. He saw the Kenite and declaimed his parables and said, strong is your dwelling, and set in a rock is your nest. For if the Kenite should be laid waste, to where can Assyria take you captive? He declaimed his parable and said, who will survive when he imposes these? Big ships from the coast of Kittim will afflict Assyria and afflict the other bank, but it too will be forever destroyed. So looking at the passage about that we just read there, although this is talking about a future event, it's written, the grammar is in the past tense, or call, the perfect sense. It's written as if it's already happened. It's in the completed action, the call format. So the star and the scepter bearer, it says, is a king of Israel, but which one? If you look at the highlighted text there, the star has issued from Jacob, scepter bearer has risen from Israel. Rashi and Ibn Ezra say this is King David, whereas Nachmani's Ramban says it is the Mashiach in the Messianic age. And I strongly suspect that the understanding in the first century of Israel was that this is talking about the future of Messiah, not the past King David, even though it was written in the completed action sense. So where it says a star issued forth from David, it's the word kochav there. You look at it it's in the second line. The second word is the word kochav, which is star. And of course, as you remember from history, kochav was a nickname of the person, the man that Rabbi Akiva claimed to be the Mashiach, and was known as Shimon bar Chokba, Shimon, son of a star. But certainly he got the wrong guy. Obviously, it wasn't bar Chokba, it wasn't Kosaba, as he was originally known. So is there a way that King David fulfilled this? Well, while King David did a lot, he did not pierce the nobles of Moab and undermine the children of Seth. So who are the children of Seth? Well, Seth was the son of Adam, right? So there would be another way of saying sons of the whole world. And so, how do we know that this prophecy has yet to come to fulfillment? Well, here's something interesting, I guess, and my thoughts on this, interesting for me anyway, that Amalek, where it says Amalek is the first among the nations, but his end will come to eternal destruction. So Amalek, we know, survived King David's reign because Agag was king of the Amalekites, and Haman, boo, was thus an Amalekite because he was called an Agagite. So did Yeshua fulfill this? Well, obviously there was a star that was prominent. You know, when the wise men learning about Yeshua's birth, but it's also a future event that ruling over the whole earth is something that is prophesied that Yeshua will do, but it's here now, but not yet, so to speak. It's not yet complete. We see that in several locations. So it's not been fulfilled yet by Yeshua either, but we know that David could not fulfill it because of the historic timeline. So again, back to 2 Peter chapter 2 and Balaamism. It starts out with this. Among the people there are also false prophets, just as there will be false teachers among you. Under false pretenses, they will introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, and thus bring on themselves swift destruction. Many will follow their debaucheries, and because of them, the true way will be maligned. In their greed, they will exploit you with fabricated stories. So we see the same sort of thing in Hikalut or Revelation. We read that section from chapter 2, verses 14 to 16. Balaam taught Balak idolatry and fornication as a way to ensnare Israel, to cause themselves to curse themselves. Essentially, this is that text. The doctrine of Balaam. Well, I think that these things sound like modern version of Balaamism. It doesn't matter what you do, what you believe in your heart is what is important. Using Yeshua or the divine name as a sort of a magic incantation. Instead of being in the world but not of the world, to attract the world, you must mix with the world.
Catholicism.
Or the idea that homosexuality was only a sin in the Old Testament, where it was associated with idol worship. In any case, those old law commandments against it are obsolete and were nailed to the cross. Sounds
similar to
Balaamism, teaching Israel, teaching people to curse themselves. So in chapter 25, the end of our portion, we come across Phineas, as a anglicized version of that. So it says, so Moses said to the judge of Israel, each of you kill your men who have been joined themselves to Baal of Peor. Then behold, a man from Bnei Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his brothers before the eyes of Moses and the whole community assembly of Bnei Israel, while they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Yikes.
Right on the heels of however many thousand being killed for this incident. And here he comes, bold as brass, with one of the women into the camp.
We've discussed this before, but it's pretty gross what this is. I guess I cut off some thing on the bottom of the slide. Apologize. Baal Peor, or the Lord Master of Peor. Peor means opening. The Talmud says the rites before the idol included eating lentils or beets, drinking strong drink, uncovering oneself, and excrementing in front of the idol. The more the one disgracefully treated the idol, the higher degree of piety attributed to the worshiper. Can you imagine? It's gross. So the goal of this, of course, is to break down all the barriers, right? To once you get rid of morality, anything goes. Nothing is immoral now. It's only animal instinct that you have, because if it feels natural to do it, do it. And with Baal Peor, do it naked, covered in excrement. The ultimate worship. Again, pretty grotesque. So matovu, of course, we recognize that from our liturgy. How goodly are your tents, O Ohalecha, O Jacob, your dwelling places, Mishkenotecha. So, as you know, this begins the essentially when you walk in the synagogue. Traditionally, you would be singing matovu.
Don't you think it's strange that they would be using as part of their services a quote from Balaam?
Again, this shows how true the prophecy was, right? I mean,
That's one way of looking at it. But it's not strange to use a saying of Balaam when Balaam did what he did.
Yeah.
Blue on blue.
Well, we do it too.
So I have some slides on our reading from Matthew. This is the text from it. We read it pretty recently. We're going to go through it too much. Took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion. Of course, that was an answer to our fun challenge. Bat Zion. Brought the donkey and the colt. So this is kind of the question: is there's discussions about Matthew. Was he interpreting it incorrectly? Because he has them bringing a donkey and a colt, whereas some would say a donkey and upon a colt the foal of a beast of burden. In other words, a single entity here. Talk about that in just a sec, though. So commentary, I have a couple places here that I've drawn some commentary from. This is from the Jewish New Testament commentary by David Stern, the late David Stern. The idea, of course, where Mount of Olives is a hill about a half mile east of Jerusalem. I think it's like 6/10 of a mile away. Between the Mount of Olives and the temple and the city wall and the temple wall is the Kidron Valley in ancient times. Bethpage is house of unripe figs, Bet Pere. And Beit Anya is house of the poor. What David Stern says, the key to understanding this passage is verse 5, which combines two passages from Tanakh, Isaiah 62:11 and Zechariah 9:9. This is a summarizing of what David Stern wrote. We'll kind of go into more detail here in just a second, but if you take a look, he's saying it in verse 5, chapter 21, verse 5 of the book of Matthew. It's essentially mixing together two different prophetic passages from different prophets, Isaiah and Zechariah. What the the passage says, "Say to the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, riding humbly on a donkey and on a colt, the offspring of a beast of burden," or the offspring of a donkey, I guess. I don't know what David Stern says in his commentaries. Combine the two verses, Yahoo gives a hint of remez that God, the salvation of Israel, the Messianic King, and Yeshua of Nazareth are one. Also, he hints at the two comings of the Messiah and the difference between them. In his first coming, Yeshua is our final atoning sacrifice, bringing salvation by his death. Therefore, he rides in Jerusalem humbly on a beast of burden, ready to perform the work which lies ahead of him. But he'll return triumphant and victorious as ruling king, rewarding the faithful, although for those who are faithful now, he has already begun to share the reward which he brings with him. So this is comments on a donkey and on a colt. The donkey is reflecting Yeshua's first coming, and we see in Revelation he's coming on horseback in the second coming as a king. And so, donkey and on a colt, Yeshua sat on them. The relationship between these two phrases has given a lot of criticism, the rise to a lot of criticism, which, if justified, impugns his credibility as a divinely inspired writer. The Greek word kai, rendered and, seems to imply that Zechariah is talking about two donkeys. In verse 7, he sat on them ambiguously. He sit on the robes, using them as a cushion, or on both donkey and the colt. The argument is that Matthew, a tax collector, was ignorant. He was an Am Haaretz, or a country bumpkin, and didn't know what he was talking about. He was unfamiliar with Hebrew parallelism, and therefore the second line of the couplet, in other words, adds to the no new information, but just states differently. The first line's already been set. That was the poetic parallel. Not knowing this, they say, he supposed the fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy required both a donkey and a colt, therefore creating the ludicrous picture of Yeshua straddling two animals at once. One can explain it, of course, by saying he did not sit on them simultaneously, but in succession, okay, giving the colt rest since it had never been ridden. One can even find meaning in Yeshua's action. His sitting on not only the donkey but on his colt symbolizes his utter humiliation, his first coming, since the colt is described as a mere offspring of a beast of burden, lower in status than the mother animal. But in fact, there's no need to suppose Matthew thought Yeshua rode on both animals. Matthew was thoroughly familiar with the Tanakh, as you can see from many times in his gospel. His quotations from the Tanakh, as David Stern says. Moreover, we know from the parallel passage that Yeshua rode only on one animal. We see from that in Mark and Luke. So Matthew mentions two donkeys for a different reason, namely to emphasize the immaturity of the colt, too young to be separated from its mother. So even looking at the Greek grammar, we'll look a little bit at Hebrew here in a minute. The Greek grammar corresponds to the Hebrew letter vav, or wa, Aramaic, makes it possible to replace an on a colt with any of these alternatives. Yes, on a colt, indeed on a colt, even on a colt, and that is on a colt. So using that as if it were Hebrew. This eliminates the explicit need for two animals to be ridden to fulfill the prophecy, and excluding the possibility that there was nevertheless two animals present. So the Talmud does an interesting homily based on Zechariah 9:9, but it obscures the difference between the first and second comings, as it says. Here's what the Talmud says on commenting on Zechariah 9:9. It says, Rabbi Alexandri said, Rabbi Yehoshua set two verses against each other. It is written, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, Daniel 7:13. Of course, as a comment there, that's where when Yeshua references himself as the Son of Man, this is where he's drawing it from, not just any old son of Adam, a human, but the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. So Okay, continue reading. While elsewhere is written, see, your king comes unto you, humbly riding on a donkey. He resolved the paradox by saying that if they deserve it, he will come with the clouds of heaven, but if not, lowly and riding on an ass or a donkey. So this discussion is enlightening in that it would be essentially saying your king is riding on a donkey because what? Why? If they did not deserve him coming. So that would be this. That's how you'd interpret Sanhedrin 98a is to say, well, Yeshua came not on the clouds of heaven with his first coming, but lowly and riding on a donkey because they did not deserve him. They did not follow him. So that's why he came as a humble servant. Of course, continue reading here. What the New Testament explanation, this is David Stern writing, of course, is that at his first coming, the Messiah was humbly riding on a donkey, but his second coming will be with the clouds of heaven. For similar paradoxes cited within the same page as the Talmud, see different places. I'm saying these are Hebrews 3:7 and 2 Peter 3:12. It has been suggested that Yeshua was an impostor who arranged this and other scenes in order to convince people he was Messiah. Here's an easy prophecy to fulfill. Let's say, I'll do what it says, and then they'll believe. If riding on a donkey colt were the only qualification for messiahship, one might take the objection seriously. Or could we all be messiahs? Clearly, Yeshua did arrange his entry into Jerusalem to fulfill Zechariah's prophecy. He also fulfilled many other prophecies which could not have manipulated, such as the time and place of his birth, as well as his resurrection. For a full listing, see his further notes in his additional section of his book here. Then then transition to verse 9. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, I'd like to take just a brief look at how different translations, or different versions rather, would read for 21 verse 5. The top on there is basically a copy paste from Shem Tov. So say the daughter of Zion, behold, your king comes to you, just and victorious is he, humble and riding upon a she-ass and upon a colt, the foal of a she-ass. The Dutele version doesn't use the phrase just and victorious, but just simply he is poor. So the difference is, this is Tzaddik Venosa, is actually, well, the Tzaddik you recognize, right? That could have been a question from the in the fun challenge. You would have had a good time commenting on that. Get back here. This one here. Tzaddik Venosa. The word Venosa or Nosa in this case actually comes from Yasha, to deliver. So the word for translated victorious, Venosa, the root word is Yasha, to deliver. You can guess, Yasha, deliverer, of course, is related to Savior, Yeshua, with the same sort of root word for that.
Righteous one.
Righteous, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's actually, perhaps interestingly, it's accurately drawn from Zechariah chapter 9. It's the exact phrase. It's drawn directly from Zechariah 9:9. As you can see, I took this from the Masoretic text. There you see that where it's written, the same exact words, of course, without the vowel points. So the connection here where it says behold, your king comes to you. Ani is the same, from the same root word. This is ani por. It's not ani I, but ani por. It's like Beit Anya, house of the poor, as we read a few minutes ago. So that is the connection between those. This dutellate substitutes a different word for that. Anyway, so that's where that shows. So slightly different from the Greek version, which says, "Behold, your king has come to you, gentle and mounted on donkey, even a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." So the Greek text here, as they translate it, at least the New American Standard, could say there's only one, the donkey even on a colt, but the foal of a beast of burden, it might be looking at a single beast. That could be all talking about the donkey, or it could be the two animals that we see in Matthew. So reading on, let me go back to the previous shouting, "Please deliver us, the son of David." Greek Hosanna translates the Hebrew Hoshiana, save please. The word, sometimes the whole phrase, is usually rendered as if it were an acclamation of praise, shouting Hoshiana to the son of David. Hoshiana is a prayer addressed to the Messiah, quoted from Psalm 118. Psalm 118 is messianic throughout, implying that the crowds recognize and honor Yeshua as the Messiah by shouting, "Please save us, son of David." As we know, son of David is a messianic sort of phrase as well. The crowd wanted the Messiah to deliver them from the Roman overlords. Again, quoting Psalm 118, recognizing Yeshua's messiahship, when they shout, "Blessed is he who comes in the name," that is, with the power and authority of Adonai. In other words, blessed is the Messiah who exercises God's control and authority on earth, and at the same time is present in the highest heaven, with intimate access to God himself. So this is the sense is clear from Yeshua's own use of the same passage in Matthew 23, verse 39. So in verse 12, this is following our passage, but pilgrims are coming to Jerusalem. Yeshua is aware of this, and the Talmud talking about the Sadducean priest taking more than is needed. Anyway, that is the on that day refers to the time when there will no longer be a merchant in the house of Adonai, merchant, trafficker, or same word used for Canaanite in the Hebrew text. So none of these will any longer be in the house of Israel, the house of Adonai of hosts, or the temple. All right, well, that was a bit long, but what are your questions? Dixie wants to know.
Would Dixie answer them?
She might. It might be shake. Do you want to shake? Yes. Want to jump over something? Yes. Want to jump over your mother's legs? Yes.
Want a treat? Yeah.
All right. Well, let's close. But thank you for allowing us to midrash on your word, for the blessings of being in fellowship together. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Brahms? Oh, that's not nice. That sounds good.
No, close. Oh, maybe it's close. 1930.